Right. My apologies, Howard. I could not hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think the conference room video is off. FYI.
Yes.
Okay.
We can go ahead and turn it on now. Sure. Okay. So,
Who we're expecting that we do not have.
yes. Balch, Fugazi, and Marquez. And Anderson is here in the attendee area.
We need 4 for quorum.
Yes, we do. So Fugazi and Balch. Wait, hold on. Either Fugazi or Balch.
Correct. You've got somebody?
We have a quorum.
Perfect. And so it's 3:01 and we're ready to begin? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
That's fantastic news. I'll probably be 3:02 by the moment. And this turn. You're set?
Yes, we're
We're going. Perfect.
Great.
It's 3:02. Today is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. We are located at the Altamont Conference Room of Ava Community Energy Headquarters at 1999 Harrison Street, Suite 2300, here in beautiful downtown Oakland, California. Members of the public wishing to make a comment can do so by either using the raise hand function of Zoom or *9 if you're joining through the telephone. Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Thank you very much. Alameda County.
Present.
Stockton. Pleasanton.
Present.
Piedmont. San Joaquin County.
Here.
Hayward. And San Leandro.
Present.
We have a quorum.
So at this point, we move to item number 2. It's public comments, the opportunity for members of the public who wish to speak on items that are not on topics that are not on our agenda. Members will have 2 minutes to provide their comments. Or is there any member of the public wishing to speak and offer a comment on a non-agendized item?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, any at our remote locations? Perfect. So we will close public comment on non-agenda items. At this point in time, we'll move to our next item on our agenda, which is the approval of our minutes. Do we have any public comments on the minutes that were presented in the agenda? Seeing none, I will take a motion for approval of the minutes.
Cheryl, I'll second.
So I believe I've got a motion from member Balch and a second from member Marquez. So with that, seeing no further discussion, can we approve these through unanimous consent or?
Normally take a
We
roll
have to
call.
take a roll call vote. Okay, perfect. So please take the roll. That was the first thing that I asked.
Okay, well, great, thank you. Great. Alameda County,
Aye.
Stockton,
Yes.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
San Joaquin County,
Yes.
Hayward, and San Leandro.
Aye.
The minutes are approved.
So we move to item number 4. At this point, we have an informational item with John Perkins, our legal director, here to discuss some proposed administrative policy procurement policy amendments.
Great. I'm going to give a quick intro to this topic and then hand it right back to John, our Deputy General Counsel, to provide a more detailed presentation on the proposed changes here. As a quick refresher reminder to our board and to our public, back in November, we brought forward a vendor, Deloitte, to assist our staff in doing our customer programs roadmap. There was commentary from the public, as well as from the CAC, and of course our cities and municipal members have been dealing with various issues related to the Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency. So those concerns were raised as it regards to some contracts that Deloitte specifically had in other areas of their business with the ICE agency, and those concerns were discussed at length in that board meeting amongst our members. And as a follow-up to that, we wanted to make sure to address some of those concerns. We know that our municipal members, a number of them, are dealing with this as a very live topic. It is of concern with a variety of our community members and our board members. And so our staff took that back, did extensive research. We've reviewed some of the proposed changes here with an ad hoc committee of the board. And so this is the first public board meeting where we are bringing this forward for discussion. And assuming things go forward smoothly, we can bring that forward to the April full board meeting for discussion and anticipated approval as well. So we know that our communities are dealing with ICE as an agency in various ways, and we want to make sure that we're addressing some of the concerns raised, and while at the same time, of course, balancing that with our operation needs as a public agency. Of course, as a energy-focused public agency, our scope is a little different than what our municipal members deal with on a day-to-day basis. We have a very lean staff, about 100 people, and we are operating in a quasi-competitive environment with PG&E, of course. So we want to move quickly and competitively from an operational perspective and ensure that we're not encumbered in terms of our administrative procurement needs. With that said, we hope that what we're bringing forward here can kind of thread that needle and balance both addressing some of the concerns raised while still maintaining operational efficiency for our staff and our agency to continue to move forward on our critical priorities around providing clean, affordable energy to all of our customers. So with that, let me hand it off to John to present the details of this proposed policy changes.
Thank you, Howard. Can we go to the next screen, please? So here's an overview of what we'll be discussing today. Those of you who attended the previous ad hoc, this will look very familiar with a few updates from that meeting. So we'll talk about the context and considerations behind these proposed changes. We'll talk about Oakland and Berkeley's approaches because those are the two member jurisdictions who've taken action in this regard. And then we'll talk about our approach, taking into consideration those approaches. Next, please. So as Howard mentioned, in November 2025, this issue came to the board. And the issue was centered primarily on the aggressive activity of ICE under the current administration. And at the time, and still at this point, because we have not yet taken additional action pending the input of the board, there are no requirements or restrictions related to ICE in our RFP template. It simply it hadn't been an issue previously. And obviously now we are revisiting how to address that. So what we did in response to these concerns, we spoke to our outside counsel, we reviewed what our member jurisdictions had been doing, we evaluated, the state of responses right now, while keeping in mind how to be practical and how to avoid unduly encumbering AVA so that it can do its job properly or nimbly. Next, please. So as I mentioned, outside council conducted a review of our member jurisdictions. Of all 18 member jurisdictions, only Berkeley and Oakland have addressed this issue directly. And we'll talk about their approach in a moment. We do want to point out that there are some important distinctions between AVA and the member jurisdictions that factored into our analysis. So of course, our member cities and counties have broad authority. They have individual ability to act, whereas AVA's mission is narrower than that of governing a municipality, and is also dependent, of course, on our directors, on our jurisdictions. Second, we're not a sanctuary city as Oakland and Berkeley are, and so we lack that sort of lever as we go forward. So we looked at this in terms of what is available to us as a JPA rather than a municipality. Next, please. Once again, we want to make sure we're being responsive to the public input, but also maintain our ability to function effectively. Next, please. All right. So as we mentioned, Berkeley and Oakland have responded to this matter. And Berkeley has prohibited contracting with any person or entity providing immigration authority with data broker or extreme vetting services. Now, these two terms become important for Berkeley and for Oakland and for AVA as a result. So you can see here, immigration authority is any person engaging in efforts to investigate, enforce, or assist the investigation or enforcement of federal immigration law. But then you have data broker and extreme vetting. And these are really key for our purposes. So data broker is one who engages in the collection of information, including information about consumers from multiple sources for the purpose of reselling that information to private sector, or engages in aggregation of data collected for another purpose than the purpose for which it was originally collected. And then extreme vetting means data mining, threat modeling, predictive risk analysis, or similar services. Of course, these can both be used to target individuals. I'll add here as a final note that Berkeley does expressly include computer network health and performance from this, because of course you do need to use data vetting and brokerage to secure your networks. Next, please. And so you see here, Oakland has a very, very similar approach. They prohibit contracting with persons or entities providing the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Customs and Border Patrol, CBP, or Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement with data broker or extreme vetting services, as well as detention facility services. We've already defined the first two, and the second are simply any private party that provides operational support to a facility intended for immigration detention purposes. So with these two member municipalities approaches in mind, we move forward. Next slide, please. So you see here, both cities require contractors to certify that they don't provide these services. Both cities leverage their status as sanctuary cities, which of course AVA doesn't have available, as the basis for their prohibitions. And both cities give themselves some flexibility. By using data broker and extreme vetting, they can search databases to see if potential vendors are providing these services. They also allow waivers when there is no reasonable alternative. Oakland itself provided 4 specific exemptions: when there was no other vendor available, when there was an emergency response need, when there was a substantial cost difference, or when there were vendors that had ended their relationships with ICE or CBP. So it wasn't a permanent scenario when the vendor had completed the work or had ceased the work. They were granted a clean slate and able to contract with Oakland. Next, please. So given that, and given AVA's situation, what we intend to do, and we are asking for the input of this group, we seek to avoid contracts with any person or entity providing the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement with data brokerage or extreme vetting services, which of course matches Oakland and Berkeley. We want to implement this by updating our procurement policy as we provided to you, maintaining similar exceptions to the prohibitions that Oakland and Berkeley have, and including boilerplate language in our contract where the counterparty represents and warrants that they don't provide the prohibited services. And as you can see at the bottom, these proposed changes have been reviewed with an ad hoc committee. Many of you are on that committee, and now we are broadening that audience. Next, please, Adrian. And now we'll go through the specific changes and the reasons for them. So what you see here is the addition to the procurement policy. Obviously, I won't read it out, but the key things being, it notes, excuse me. It notes that we will not enter into these contracts. It provides the exceptions, and it makes clear that the burden is on the vendor, not on staff, because we will make this a contractual compliance matter. And this will be a little bit more clear when we get to the language in the boilerplate contract that follows. Go to the next slide, please. This slide is simply for definitions for the matters we've been providing. So here you'll see we are actually focused on providers. So providers are the persons or entities entering into these services. We've defined ICE, of course, we've defined extreme vetting, and we've defined data brokerage, just like Berkeley and Oakland. And next slide, please. And then here's the content that we want to include in our contract template. So this is the representation and warranty that the vendor does not engage with ICE for data brokerage and for extreme vetting services. So the idea being they've represented and warranted upon entering that they do not engage in these services. If they do engage in these services, this is breach of the agreement, therefore jeopardizing their vendor relationship with us. Next slide, please. So you'll see we'd love your feedback, your recommendations based on our current proposal. And depending on how this goes, we are happy to bring this forward at the April board meeting if this group agrees.
Okay, so at this point in time, we will quickly take public comment on this item if we have any.
Yes. Jim Lutz, recognized for 3 minutes.
About the prohibition on contracting, I have a question and then I have another comment. The question is, why does it expire December 31st, 2028? Shouldn't it be permanent? So that's one question. And because it was provided, I read through the procurement policy, and under power procurement, I would like to see an added reference to the AVA Community Energy Workforce and Environmental Justice Project Selection Criteria. That criteria promotes workforce and local workforce development, innovation, projects located in AVA's service territory, and environmental stewardship benefits to equity priority communities. Because power procurement is now like almost $1 billion a year, approaching $1 billion a year. And as much as possible, that should be directed, that money should be kept within its territory. And it seems like procurement policy should include that. I know it's not the topic here, but procurement power policy is. So those are my kinds of questions. Why is it temporary? And why that date? And then also broaden the procurement policy to include those other things, which were very important in EPCE's formation. Great.
Thank you.
That's it.
Doki Kim, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to express my sincere appreciation as the Energy Democracy Campaign organizer, organizing with communities in Alameda and San Joaquin County, which is in AVA service territory. But thank you to AVA staff, legal counsel, and the ad hoc committee for taking this issue seriously as it is very close to the hearts of immigrant communities and communities directly impacted definitely want to uplift that as a public agency. It is important to uphold equity, justice, and the values of the JPA. And I look forward to seeing this at the board meeting as a permanent policy. I would recommend that Ava Community Energy revisit the customer program strategic roadmap to make sure that it is aligned with this proposed policy. And just want to affirm that during this time when our communities are under attack, our rights are under attack, it is extremely important to take this with the weight it and the gravity it deserves. So I just want to express my appreciation and looking forward to all the public input for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further hands raised at this time.
Do we have any hands raised at or any public commenters at our local, at our remote locations? Not seeing any, I will close public comment on this item and begin with Member Marquez.
Thank you, Chair. Is my audio coming in okay?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. I just want to thank staff for this presentation. Really impressed with the quick turnaround on this and the level of engagement and seriousness and urgency. So just want to give my sincere gratitude for that work. A couple follow-up questions with respect to the breach of contract. How do you anticipate being aware of that breach? Is it just going to be something that staff is going to be monitoring? Is the expectation that the board will or the public? Just wanted to hear feedback with respect to that. And then I have a couple more questions.
Absolutely. So there would not be active pursuit. As we discussed in the ad hoc, we're a small agency. We don't have the resources to be doing continual diligence, especially given the number of contractors we have. But in the event that anything were to surface, that would be the basis of the breach.
Okay. And then where are we at with respect to, it sounds like the goal would be based off the comments today. This would come to our April board meeting for adoption. And then what would be the next step with respect to reissuing the RFP for the strategic roadmap, the work that we were going to vote on back in November?
Oh, I'm afraid that's not a question I can answer. I apologize.
Okay.
I can just comment on that. Certainly, we wanted to make sure we have clarity on this and understanding how we can move forward given the prior process that we brought forward to the board. I anticipate that we're going to move quickly. And to be clear, with our board, we have been moving in parallel on certain pieces of that roadmap process, just in terms of staff analysis, engagement. Annie Henderson, our Chief Customer Officer, has been working on that process specifically and thinking about stakeholder engagement. So different pieces of that have been moving forward regardless of some of the delays that were created from the vendor selection process. I think we still need to further determine if we want to reissue the RFP in a similar form to what we had before, or whether we're going to actually break that up a little bit and phase it. So TBD on that, but rest assured that we are actively working on that process in parallel.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my comments and feedback at this time. Thank you.
Member Rickman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question. So how far to the supply chain are you guys going to look? I mean, if you have a vendor and they get their product from several different sub-vendors who gets it from additional sub-vendors, I mean, so how far do you have to look back? I mean, how many vendors are you looking at here?
So if you're talking about subcontractors, we're not looking at the subcontractor for our vendor. It would be a function of whether our vendor is providing those services. Now, if the vendor is providing those services using a subcontractor, then that would qualify as providing the services. The subcontractor would the impact would impute on the vendor, because the vendor, of course, is directing them to do that. However, if we have one vendor providing services that have nothing to do with any of the prohibited services, if they were working with a third party separately, like that wouldn't impact our analysis. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat, and we can talk offline about it, but that's good enough for now. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to clarify the answer for my own purposes. So the representation is by the vendor to Ava. They are not making any further representation about what their suppliers do or do not do.
Provided that the supplier is not acting at the behest of the vendor to do this work for us. Because that would qualify as we are doing this.
To do the work for ICE.
Or providing the data services for us.
So for example, if we use contractor A, supplier A, and supplier A does nothing with ICE, they provide no stream vetting, they offer no data brokerage services, but they regularly partner with a supplier to them, sub-supplier B. And they're always telling B, hey, we'll work together and we'll tell you and you do the work for ICE. That would be a problem for us.
I have to
Yeah, because I think
qualify it a little bit because, sorry.
yeah, no, I don't want to go down too far down this rabbit hole, but I think that before our meeting, we probably need to have some scenarios worked through, because I think this is always the cascade into the subcontractors, sub-licensees, sub-whoever's. That's always where this thing can get really extra complicated.
That's fair, but I think there is actually a relatively simple final answer, which is if A is providing services that using B to provide those services, and those services provided by B implicate our prohibition, then yes. It's A, are you doing it yourself? That's not allowed. B, are you taking responsibility for it, but having someone else do it? That's also not allowed. So
Hey, John, let me interrupt for just a minute here. I appreciate this example. There are so many edge cases in this process that we want to make sure that we're evaluating, thinking about real illustrative examples so that we can see how that runs through the policy. I think this is a good edge case that prior to us taking it forward to this forward to the full board, we should certainly consider whether that's clear and how this would get operationalized. It is my reaction that this should be narrowly focused and not encumber operations. Once we start moving to subcontractors, I think it will really challenge our staff to know what is happening beyond our direct vendor that we're contracting with. So it is my view that the intention of this is once you remove from an entity that we're contracted with directly, outside of course, how we've defined direct ownership in this very clearly, that it would not further move down the string, because that's going to get very challenging for our staff to understand what's happening one vendor away or a vendor away from that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments online from members? Okay, so then I'll just ask two other questions. There are some entities that we may use for due diligence, like Equifax TRW, whose job it is to compile and sell data. Would they fall into this prohibition?
well, I guess the fundamental question would be, are they providing that data to ICE?
Yeah.
That'd be the baseline question.
And would they tell us, and what do we know?
Would they tell us? They would be at risk of course breach of contract if they were doing it and they signed that agreement. But I will add, it's unlikely it would impact us because we have specific carve-outs for general commodities, and as long as they're not being customized, in this case, we would have the opportunity to work with them.
Perfect. Did we at the ad hoc committee, did we consider separating out work for immigration enforcement specifically, as opposed to border protection, customs enforcement, drug interdiction work, and the like? I'm not sure who to address. I'll start with you.
I'll take the first stab at that. As I understood it, and as I know we intended to limit this specifically to ICE and ICE alone.
Yeah. I think
That's
what you're saying is
immigration and customs enforcement.
right.
But
And I think
for-
your comment is that ICE does multiple, a variety of services,
Correct.
some of which we may not even be fully aware of, but certainly at a high level, we are familiar with, the sort of the broader umbrella of services that they do. Some of which may be of increasing concern currently, some of which may not be. I think the short answer is yes, we have considered that. And I think that's part of what we're challenged with here is to ensure that we're not overly encumbering our operations as we think about the broad array of services that a large federal agency like ICE is doing. This policy, I think, tries to contemplate that as it relates to the defining data broker and extreme vetting services. But it is not a perfect carve out to ensure that all things that some of which we like, some of which we don't like, are well addressed. I think that is part of the reason why we do have a sunset clause in here, because some of the actions of the agency at this time are of heightened and increased concern, but in a number of years that could change. So that's part of the way that we've addressed that, knowing that we are not able to perfectly detail granularly the various services and things that ICE are doing.
Okay, so I think in the end, this is informational, so this is going on to the full body. I will just express the primary concern that I have. The particularly bad behavior that we have seen, I don't think is correlated with extreme data vetting or anything like that. It's stopping people that are brown on the streets and arresting them, even though they're US citizens and the like. It's shooting American citizens and killing American citizens. And I don't think that that had anything to do with any of what's going on here in this resolution. So I feel like we're kind of missing it a little bit, but that's really for the full board to decide. The biggest concern that I have, beyond the killing of American citizens and the arresting of American citizens because of the color of their skin, is that at a time where customs enforcement might be of heightened sensitivity, to take some bad behavior by certain actors in the immigration world and try to have a policy that impacts the customs enforcement and the transport of dangerous substances into our country world, I have some heartburn on that. And so I'll be curious to see how that more fully gets discussed at the board meeting. Okay, I think we're done with this item if we don't have any other hands. So we will close off this item and go to item number 5 on our agenda. And for that, we have JP Ross leading the discussion, unless we have someone else introducing Mr. Ross.
We'll go straight to JP there.
Thanks, Howard. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm JP Ross, Vice President of Local Development here at AVA, and we'll be presenting a program update on our AVA Charge activities. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Adrian. So just wanted to provide a bit of a background. Our AVA Charge program is working to deliver reliable, publicly accessible, and affordable fast charging. And we have been focused on delivering sites, our fast charging sites near multifamily hotspots and retail amenities. The multifamily hotspots are really to focus on people who don't own their homes and don't have access to home charging. And so we built a map around kind of multifamily housing hotspots and some charging deserts that we had identified. So we want to serve that portion of our population, about 47%, prior to, actually, I have to update our numbers because this was prior to a lot of our San Joaquin County enrollment. About 47% of our residents were renters. So we're really trying to target those folks and provide more accessible EV charging to renters and anybody who wants to drive an EV in our territory. So we do that working with our city partners, some of you all, to identify lots and garages where we can sign a site license agreement with the cities to utilize some stalls at those publicly owned lots and garages that meet some of our siting criteria. As I said, being in multifamily housing hotspots and retail amenities, as well as other requirements for installing fast chargers, including having enough stalls to dedicate some parking spaces to EV charging, as well as access to electrical capacity. So as many of you are probably aware, it's not easy to get access to electrical capacity to site new load in Alameda and San Joaquin counties. So that's a critical component, is being able to tie into PG&E's distribution system for our chargers. And then Ava, we are responsible for customer pricing, for marketing to our drivers to come use this the sites, and we take that utilization risk. And so we have plans to allocate about $3 million over 10 years to this program, and so far within the local development budget, we've allocated just over $17 million to our Ava Charge program since we started putting dollars aside for this program in 2021. Next slide, please. So we, in order to do this, we put together a delivery model that was specific to this asset that is based on how we procure some of our renewable energy assets, namely batteries. So we didn't want to put all of these assets on our balance sheet. And so we put together an agreement where we would work with asset owners, developers who would bring these projects to fruition, who could work with us on procurement, on development and operation over the 10-year period. They would own these assets on our behalf and basically sell us the capacity, the reliability of these chargers. And we would purchase that on a monthly basis, similar to how we structure our battery tolling agreements, where developers put batteries online and we're able to use those to meet our needs. So we put together a contract, went out to market, and ended up contracting with a couple of counterparties to do that. So they develop the sites, they operate them, we pay them on a monthly basis. And in November of 2022, we brought an action item to the board to authorize us to negotiate and execute agreements with two different counterparties that we had identified. One is EV Realty, and the second is Calibrate Energy, to develop, own, and operate these assets on our behalf. And this is a very immature market. It's a new space, and this type of agreement was new. We spent quite a bit of time developing it in conjunction with the counterparties who we expected to operate these assets with. And we felt it was important to have a couple of different providers in order to kind of manage the risk of operating this new type of agreement. So we did execute agreements with both of those counterparties. And currently we have one site in operation at Oakland City Center West Garage. And EV Realty is currently operating that first site. I'll go into some details about that on the next slide, please. So we do have our first site in operation. It's at Oakland City Center West Garage, a few blocks from our site and next to the freeway. This is the largest non-Tesla public fast charging site now in Northern California. There's 31 charging ports, and they cover all the types of light duty vehicles. So the NACS chargers are the Tesla specific chargers, but quite a few vehicles are now using that charging port type. CCS1 for a lot of other vehicles, and then the CHAdeMO connectors are legacy. There's only a couple of vehicles on the road now who are using those, but it's important to provide charging for all the vehicles that we expect to see at our sites. So the site is operating at a very high availability, approaching a couple thousand charging sessions there. And then we hosted a ribbon cutting, and it was great to see many of you at that back in November of 2025. So that site is currently operational, and we are working on developing more. Next slide, please. So update on our development status. So we have executed our contract with Calibrant Energy, and we have been planning to develop our next 4 sites with Calibrant. And those 4 sites are ready for construction. They're in 3 different cities, Oakland, Livermore, and Piedmont. We have our electrical capacity reserved for those sites. We have the approved permits. We've got the hardware ready to install. These sites are pretty close to being ready to mobilize construction crews to go and develop. And recently, Calibrant notified Ava that they are intending to shift their business model away from operating EV assets. They ended up buying a different company. They've got some organizational strategic realignment, and they are not interested in developing and owning these assets for us in the long term. And so we are working on what our alternatives are. So we do have our PG&E capacity for these sites, as well as 8 additional sites across other cities that we have signed site license agreements to. And so we're working on figuring out how we can develop not only these first 4 sites that we're ready to commence construction on, but also the other sites in our AvaCharge portfolio. So we've been managing this timeline with both our contractor as well as city staff. So we've let city staff know that this situation has arisen, where we've got some delays with the delivery of these sites. And so keeping everybody apprised of that, we wanted to bring it to you as well. And our work right now to transfer these sites to a different developer, but that even if we do transfer these sites to another developer, there's still going to be a delay from when we initially expected to put these next 4 sites into operation. Next slide, please. So we're evaluating our options for continuing our work with AvaCharge. We have been in discussions with Calibrant and EVR about shifting these projects that Calibrant has been developing over to EV Realty. And so that's been a priority of our team over the last bit of time to understand what that would mean. They are 2 different contracts, and so there's terms that we will have to agree to with both parties to shift these projects to EVR. And then we're also evaluating other options. So, we could put these sites on Ava's balance sheet, own and operate these sites ourselves as a different delivery model. When we initially developed the tolling agreement, and one of the rationales was, the agency did not have deep experience owning and operating sites. I'd say we're still in that place. We do have some more experience in developing our critical municipal facility sites. They are on track now for final inspection in April, which is fantastic. But it's not like we've owned and operated those assets for a long period of time. So we are building some of that capability. And we also have some more internal resources to develop and manage assets that we have been building since we started on this AvaCharge journey. So we're evaluating those options, recognizing that owning assets puts considerable requirements on the agency, not only from a financial perspective, but also from an operational perspective. So we're evaluating kind of what our ownership options are. Another option would be to issue another RFP and identify a different operator to work with. So this is where we are at this point in time with AvaCharge. If we can go to the next slide, please. So As I mentioned, we're working with EVR and Calibrant to evaluate shifting these projects to EVR. We expect that's going to take a couple of months, and we'll be updating you as we progress. As in addition to that, we're evaluating our other development and ownership options, so we can come back to the board with a recommendation on how we plan to develop additional future AVA charge sites. And that is the end of our update.
Okay, so at this point in time, we'll take public comment on this item. Anybody from the public who would like to speak on this item?
Yes, I would. Jim Woods again, and JP, you seem to have an unfair amount of troubles with contractors historically. But I wanted to, so I wish you well with the process and hope it goes smoothly. But in considering when you're evaluating the alternative ownership models, what is the expected or anticipated difference in income stream cost for AVA owning the chargers, owning and operating the chargers compared to using third parties? How much does that change the financial considerations? And I don't know if you even have that number yet, but it seems like owning them would mean that AVA would get more income from those sorts of projects. So it's just a question.
Do we have any other public comment at remote locations? I do not believe so, based on the faces that I'm seeing there. Would either JP or Howard like to explore some of our thoughts around the difference between income streams if we own versus outsource that, and just some of the things that we consider without getting necessarily into our contracting negotiations with EVR as we ask them to expand or explore their expansion?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the elements that we are evaluating as we evaluate our different ownership and development options. There's an external cost of capital that private developers have, and they have different funding streams. Part of our rationale for the agreement as it was structured was to take the utilization and some of the kind of private sector risk that somebody might take if they didn't know how much revenue was going to be generated from these chargers. And we took that on board so that we would try to lower the cost of capital that a private sector developer, would bring to own and operate these assets for us, because they could take the development risk and the technology risk and not take the utilization and the revenue risk. So we've been thoughtful about how we structured this agreement. That said, AVA has its own internal kind of cost of capital assumptions, and as a nonprofit, Joint Powers Authority, as a public agency, we do have a lower cost of capital than a private sector operator, but they also have more experience, developing and operating and owning assets of this type, and so some of that capital difference is the risk profile and the risk difference in operating these assets over the long term. So those are all things that we're evaluating as we are thinking about what's the best course of action and what's going to be best for the agency to continue to develop these assets.
If I could also add, just taking a step back, part of the reason for us to present this is when we just wanted to be transparent with our board, as we've been transparent and working closely with our individual municipal members as well on this particular portfolio of sites. So just wanted to sort of surface this as an issue and flag that we're working through it, but also wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk about project ownership and asset ownership specifically. We have done that, of course, with the critical municipal facilities portfolio as well. And as an agency, we have been, and I would say the CCA industry at large has really been balance sheet light. That's by intention for a couple of reasons. One, it has allowed us to get out and serve our customers as quickly as possible and to build large scale as well as small scale renewable energy, clean energy projects as quickly as possible, utilizing sort of third party capital, third party balance sheets, and the sort of technical operations and competencies and capabilities of outside developers and installers. I have a view that long term, we will want to build that competency in-house. Where we go with that is the open question. I think we're going to want to put more on our balance sheet as we evaluate the trade-offs of risk versus lower costs and creating more value for our agency and for our customers. And I think that decision will likely differ across the sort of the asset spectrum when you look at super small projects, small behind the meter type resources, charging infrastructure, as you go to larger wholesale projects of potentially multi-hundred megawatt type solar, wind, or battery storage type projects. So that is absolutely part of our sort of strategic evaluation process now. And I think critical to really understand what are the technical competencies, capabilities, asset management capabilities, and what is the risk of owning these types of assets. And so it is a very robust sort of modeling exercise to really do that and consider what are the risks over a 5, 10, 20-year asset life to really consider that. And I think we, with intention, as a young agency, have looked to the sort of the private sector to build a lot of those assets as much as possible. This particular portfolio, AvaCharge, is a really unique approach where we were particularly creative as we went out to market to say, let's split up the areas to underwrite. And we said, hey, let's look for the private sector market to underwrite the technical risk, and for us, Ava, to actually underwrite the utilization risk, think about the customer engagement risk, how to set rates and things like that. Obviously, given the challenges that we've seen here, in particular with these counterparties, we're reassessing that, but that was the approach here that I just wanted to emphasize.
Thank you. At this point in time, we will go to Member Balch.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I listened to this. I think JP's presentation is right on. I mean, we're hearing it, we understand. I'm gonna exit stage left or right. At least for my constituents right now, they are realizing that the value proposition was something that we had to adjust as a result of budget challenges and pressure. And so, I'm just coming back to energy affordability and that value proposition is reminded me it's kind of a northern light here, right? Or northern star. And so I think when I hear of this additional risk profile that we're looking at and what's going on with this sub-provider, I think we should be very careful, and not that we are not, but just I'm going to heighten it, of how much risk the agency is going to be wanting to take on, as some of our other partners are basically not with us any further. And again, it'd be, I guess I'm trying to imply that, for my constituents, getting back to a better value proposition is something that they are very interested in, right? So I see us, again, like I said, we all know the budget conversations. We all know we estimated certain things. We all know it's a little bit better than we thought, but not out of the woods yet. We all know we're using a lot of our funds there. And as I just look at the risk profile of the agency overall, not only with this, but then the other elements that we've kind of already took on with the critical municipal facilities already as well, smaller by far, and I don't want to overstate. I just want to make sure we're maybe conscientiously looking at that risk profile in a very diligent process. And not to say we're not, but I think from my side, getting back to how do we get back to a better value proposition long term is also something my constituents are asking me to keep in mind. So I don't know if that means we reduce the size of this project. I don't know if that means that at some point the risk profile gets so egregious and maybe we need a fresh evaluation of the risk profile. But I've noticed, and JP, you're unfortunately like mentioned by the public commenter, you're the one that unfortunately has a lot of these projects, and we are trying to push those boundaries. But I think my message is clear. I'm a little concerned with all of the headwinds we're facing in our agency. So I'll stop there for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I am not seeing any other hands raised at this time. In the absence of hands raised, I'll just, without jumping on that too hard, just say, let's just keep an eye on risk. I know that in preparation for this meeting, Howard, you and I had spoken. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, for being transparent. And perhaps to Member Balch's point, at some point, having a discussion about, well, what is that risk exposure on some of these local development projects? Because I know relative to procurement exposure, it may or may not be material, but I don't think that right now we as board members are in a position to really, understand that at the tip of our fingers. And so I think that being able to say, this is our biggest risk, this is by this approximately the same risk, this is very different risk by a different order of magnitude, and laying that out a little bit, I think would be helpful. Seeing nothing else on this item, I think we'll close this item and go to board member, committee member comments, announcements, requests for items on future agendas. Starting with Member Fugazi.
Yes, hello. So, I was just thinking, I know we're probably a little unique because Stockton is, we're the new kids on the block, so to speak, and we're hitting our 1 year mark. And so I didn't know if the company puts out like a customer survey or something like that. But I know that, we've kind of been like this, and I really would like to get some feedback from people on their experience with Ava and their level of satisfaction. I don't know if you do that, but I just think it would be something that we should consider.
Absolutely. We always look to get customer feedback through a variety of means. We don't necessarily do that on a formal basis 1 year from sort of a new member's sort of operational launch. So let us take that back and consider that. But I will say that overall, any concerns with Stockton are, I think, minimal. The retention rates are very high. We do have a direct dialogue. Some of that is more anecdotal, informal, of good customer satisfaction, and people are pleased with the value that we're bringing and having an alternative to their historical PG&E services. I'll also say that with any operational launch, there's always an expectation with new customers. There's a lot of questions being asked, and a little bit of churn that happens there that is emphasized, particularly in the early months of service, where you typically see anywhere from, say, 2 to 5% opt-outs. And that's what we have seen with the city of Stockton, which is in line with all of our other member cities. So nothing of concern to speak to there, but we can absolutely follow up on additional data and information that may be helpful to support that.
Member Rickman.
Thank you, Chair. To Howard, I think that's a good idea by Mayor Fugazi. So what's the problem with doing it?
There's no problem with doing it other than just the operational expense of reaching out to customers. I would say the biggest challenge, quite frankly, is just to ensure that customers fully understand who Ava is before you ask them, are you satisfied or not? And I think a lot of our process is actually more focused on the educational aspects. But
like she was saying, it's been a year, right? It's not like it's been 2-3 months. So I'm sure, they kind of know who Ava is after paying the bill for a year.
Yeah, we may want to follow up on that offline as well. I think there is absolutely continues to be more room for education and discussion with customers to continue to educate them, even a year in, to make sure that they understand who Ava is. Fairly technical in terms of how we fit into the electricity services in terms of generation, and then understanding how PCI fits in, everything like that. So again, I agree with the intention and the concept of doing a customer survey, and we have done that at times. So it's not something that we shy away from in concept. It's just ensuring that it's robust and that we get a good responsiveness from those types of surveys, and ensuring that we're getting those responses that are also informed by who Ava is, so that they're robust data that we can provide back.
And and I'll leave it at this, Chair. And what Mayor Fugazi said, I mean, we're in the same boat in the fact that we're coming on. So if there is something that we can do better through this, talking to our folks within a year, I mean, that's something this San Joaquin County can use instead of reinventing the wheel. So if there's something that we could reach out better, we can use the data that came from Stockton and push it to us, Lathrop, Tracy, or whoever it may be. So I think it's, I agree with Fugazi on that one. So thank you, Howard, and thank you, Chair.
Okay, looking for any other hands and not seeing any. So I will let the two of you guys maybe have that discussion offline and explore how to best do that. I will just offer my unsolicited comment that when I look at my bill says PG&E, and then it says a little section in tiny print, energy provided by Ava Community Energy, but everything else about the bill is PG&E. So I think that at least in the city of San Leandro, there's I think a lot of, I won't say confusion. I think people just assume that their power is from PG&E. Anything that we can do to keep educating folks is important. The one that I will add, and if you tell me it's better served at the board meeting, I'm fine with that. I do think that it's a year where we've done some legislative advocacy that's very specific to a hot topic, namely PCIA. And so now that bills should be out of their house of origin by the time of our next meeting, I think it would be a good time to get a little bit of just the temperature check on legislation that we are following in Sacramento. Coming back.
Can I just make a comment there that we do have
Certainly.
a legislative item coming to the April board meeting for your awareness? Yeah.
Perfect. And will that, I'm just not positive. Is that when do things need to leave their house of origin?
I'm going to get that wrong off the top of my head, but is in that presentation with a schedule of when they flip from the Assembly to the Senate and vice versa. And so the April board meeting is as a follow-up to our March meeting where we previewed the bills. And so the April board meeting will bring forward recommended positions on it and give any sort of status updates on relevant bills there. And to the extent we don't provide that proactively, we can always use that as a discussion forum to flag additional bills as well for status updates.
Thank you. Member Marquez.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just wanted to ask a clarifying question on this topic of just customer engagement, satisfaction, understanding of what Ava is. I don't recall specifically if we've done any like educational inserts into the bill just to provide an additional awareness touch point. I could just speak with my experience on the board. The majority of the people don't even know we exist. And, we're deep in the community. We do so much engagement. I know there's meetings, presentations at council meetings. All of us are talking about it. And the day-to-day person is just heavily involved with their life. They don't look at that fine print on the bill. So I'm just wondering, have we added inserts just for like public awareness?
We have not added inserts, and I say we are restricted from doing so. So it is a highly regulated process, and we are limited in what we can do in the bill itself to that fine print that Mayor Gonzalez had referenced. So unfortunately, we're quite limited in what we can do directly on the bill. With that said, we communicate through a variety of other means. But clearly, I'm hearing this as an item that we should follow up on. It is a top of mind item for us constantly in terms of how we engage with the customers, knowing the challenges of getting people to really fully understand their bill and understand sort of what role we play in providing electricity services. So this point is well received, and we'll certainly follow up. Certainly with individual board members, and we may bring it forward as a full board item as well, or at least a committee item, just to better inform our board itself on how do we engage with the customers, where are we at, what are the various needs.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing smiles and no hands. At this point in time, it's 4:03 and we are adjourned. And the smiles just got bigger. Look at that.
Thank you all.
See ya.